Okay, you are all set.
All right. Welcome everybody to the August 23rd meeting of the Planning Board. We will start off with a roll call. On something else here. All right, so I'll go with who I do see. Mark Giddens,
Here.
Haley Orbital,
Here.
Sue Felshen,
Here.
Linda Miller. She is not here. And Andrew Boardman. All right, so there's just 4 of us. Okay. Do we, I don't, Elizabeth, do we know that they were both not going to attend tonight? Is that right?
I do know for a fact that Linda was not gonna attend, and I was not sure about Andrew.
Okay, so he may be just running a little bit late, so we'll see if he joins
He may.
later on. Okay. All right, so with that out of the way, let's start off with the first agenda item, which is related to Quarry North Road LLC. They have asked for a continuance with no discussion until September 13th. I don't know that we need to have any discussion about that, but everybody's okay with
You
that.
don't, since the planning board's only making a recommendation, you can, you as chair can just continue that discussion.
Okay, so should I just put it to 7 p.m. Same.
Yep,
Same.
that'd be
Okay.
great.
Great, so let's continue the application from Quarry North Road LLC for a special permit under sections 10, 11.6 and 11.8 of the zoning bylaw for a planned residential development for 6 units at 48Y Fitchburg Turnpike, parcel number 3419 to 7 p.m. on September 13th.
Correct. Thank you.
All right, with that out of the way, Elizabeth, would you like to sort of brief us on this first other administrative item?
So for McCollar Lane, which was the Hosmer Meadow subdivision, definitive subdivision, it was for 4 lots. The performance guarantee put up by the applicant is a restrictive covenant that says the lots cannot be sold until the roadway is adequate up to that unit and that there is sufficient performance guarantee remaining in any of the remaining lots held under the restrictive covenant. So far, the board has released lot 1 and 2. The applicant's requesting release of lot 3. What will remain as for coverage for the performance guarantee is the final lot 4. The engineering division has reviewed and found acceptable the interim as-built plans and the engineer's certificate and remaining cost analysis for the items that are remaining. And the last lot is sufficient to cover those items. So it is recommended that the board move to, and I have it right here, so hang on. Move to authorize the release of lot 3, 41 McCollar Lane from the Hosmer Meadows definitive subdivision restrictive covenant and authorize the town planner to sign on behalf of the board.
Does anyone want to say that exact same thing?
Or does anybody have
Or
any
just
questions?
say, I agree to that, and yes. Haley, Mark, Sue,
I make a motion that we move to authorize the release of lot 3, 41 McCullough Lane from the Hosmer Meadows definitive subdivision restrictive covenant and authorize the town planner to sign on behalf of the board.
I second the motion.
thank you, Sue, and thank you, Mark. All right, we'll take a vote of, again, the people that I can see in order. So Mark,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
and don't believe Andrew has joined yet or will, so I'm the last one and I'm also a yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right. The next item is the Envision Concord action items and discussion. And Elizabeth, I believe you were going to share the screen with the workbook.
Yes. Once I find it, hang on. Okay. Is that big enough for everybody to see?
Yes.
Okay
Yeah.
by me.
Yeah, it's fine by me as well.
Okay, great. So I first want to remind the board that this is something that the board has been doing for the last couple of years. But it was last year that the select board actually requested all boards and committees to provide them an update, and the planning board's this spreadsheet was complemented on by all of the select board members. So I just want to just again remind you that all the work you did putting into developing this is appreciated. So usually what the board does is just go through each one of these items and just update it, have a discussion about it. Is the time frame still where the board wants to be? For whatever reason, something move forward, something fall back, or so if you want, we can just start going through these. Is that acceptable, Nathan?
I think that might be good, unless for the two new members, Sue, you mentioned you'd had a chance to look through it. I don't know if Mark, if you have as well. I didn't know if, being the first time looking through it, if there was any one section or goal that you had any questions about or you want to focus on, so we could spend a little time on that, or if you're both okay with just kind of going down the line.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, just go down the line. I mean, I think, I'm aware of what the Envision plan is, so, but
Yeah, and I have a couple of comments here and there, but I think going down the line is a good way of going.
Good. And Haley, I didn't mean to leave you out of that. I just wanted to, since they were the two new members. Yeah, okay, so let's go down the line. So the first is historic resources. Elizabeth, can you scroll down just a little bit?
So we have action item 4, which is it's a general overarching statement. The planning board determined that they would not be the lead to this, but would definitely be involved with whatever, whether it was the HDC or the historical commission or maybe one of the cultural councils, that the planning board would definitely be just involved if needed and asked to be. The next action item listed on here, and I'm just referencing the numbers that are in this column. So I'm not sure if so number 1, again, this is if there's to be any expansion of one of the historic districts, that would be the HDC would be the lead community on that. At this time, I'm not aware of any discussions or any property owners that are seeking to be included into the district. But if that does arise, the planning board would definitely be involved if they needed to be.
were we, Elizabeth, were we
Yep.
involved? Was the planning board involved a couple of years ago when we looked at expanding the Main Street Historic District to include Sudbury Road down to Dunkin' Donuts? I don't remember.
No, I don't think it ever made it
Okay.
to
No, we didn't go before the town meeting. I mean, we talked about it, but
right.
we got too much pushback from some of the neighbors.
Right. So I don't think it ever made it to the point where
I was just
the
curious.
planning board would have been involved.
Yep.
So what would happen, so I think it's 2 years ago, the two property owners on Thoreau wanted to be included in the Main Street district.
Right.
If a warrant article is placed on the warrant for town meeting, the public hearing for that warrant article is at the planning board session. And the
Oh.
planning board is required to make a recommendation.
I see.
So that would be the technical requirements for the planning board.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
So the next item, the demolition delay bylaw, which was renamed, it's now the demolition review bylaw. That was updated at the 2021 annual town meeting. And then it was, so this needs to be updated. It was, I don't think there. I don't think there was anything on the annual town meeting for 2022, but I will look into this one. I just can't remember. Hang on. No, they did not move forward with anything at 2022. So I do know that the historical commission will probably be looking at whether certain tweaks or amendments need to be made to the bylaw. That's something that they discuss every year, but I will check to see if that is something that's on their immediate radar coming up. And then the next item 4 is the neighborhood conservation districts. The planning board did have a discussion about this. I want to say it maybe at the end of last year.
That sounds about right.
And what was that?
So that sounds about right.
Yeah, end of last year. And it's, I believe that the outcome at that time, and I'll have to go back through the minutes, was that if there was some grassroots effort from a particular neighborhood that wanted to move forward with this, that the planning board would assist in that, if there was a grassroots effort from a neighborhood, or if the historical commission or the HDC, likely if either one of them or a coordinated effort wanted to look at developing a bylaw for this, that the planning board would assist with that. But the momentum for this type of bylaw would need to basically start with some grassroots effort, and not the planning board just assuming that a neighborhood should become a neighborhood conservation district. There's a lot of conversation out there about these districts and the establishment of them, because it's those property owners basically overseeing their neighbors and determining, what should happen and what should be built. And for a lot of communities that I've talked to, that has really created a lot of tension in a neighborhood. So that's what I remember of the conversation that the planning board had. So I don't know if the board wants to reach out to the historical commission or the HDC to see if this is something that the 3 committees that you would like to get together and talk with them about it or not, or if this is not every action item in here is something that the planning board has to feel they have to pursue. And so I'll leave it at that.
So
I
I was just gonna say your recollection of the conversation, I definitely remember that we left it at, if it was a grassroots effort, that we would act in a supporting role for that, or assist them basically. So I'm wondering, we have that listed in red as a 1 to 2 year goal. I don't know if we can do something to change that to just show it's more similar to what's above where it shows for like another committee, but basically say community involvement, community driven, something like that.
Or possibly community or another committee, since if the historical commission or HDC came to us, then we would at least engage them.
Yeah.
And while you're at it, in the previous column, Elizabeth, when you get a chance, can you fix the spelling of Canantum?
Where am I?
In the previous column, column C, where it says
Oh,
number 4,
here.
study the use of, yeah, Canantum. Yeah. Get rid of, perfect.
I will have to actually look at the Envision Concord plan to see if it's spelled incorrectly, because I believe this whole table was lifted from there.
Very shocking.
I might just do this on the side, but this is one, and I don't know if I was around yet when the board spent much time on this, or maybe I just missed it, but as I was researching just FAR generally last year when we were going through the FAR thing and looking at across the country at different policies that have been brought up related to like, how do you preserve, or try to prevent, tear downs and the destruction of neighborhood character with new construction houses these days, and neighborhood conservation districts were most often one of the major alternatives mentioned when it came to like what's an alternative to like fixing FAR or addressing things via FAR. So I just, as I've gotten more familiar with West Concord as I've been here a few years now, I think there's a couple communities in particular that I'd be just curious to ask them their thoughts on it. I think you have to be pretty well versed in zoning to even know what it is and if it is an option, or just, there's some education to it in general. But I might just be curious to like ask around a little bit more about this, since it seems like we've kind of run into a dead end on FAR.
So Haley, were these were Massachusetts communities?
No, not necessarily. So, I know that there are plenty of Massachusetts communities that have these conservation districts, neighborhood conservation districts, but I think I was coming across just literature last year, across the entire country about like how different states or, cities have tried to address, mansionization.
Yeah. So from at least the material that I've looked into, there's a lot of so like an open space residential development, OSRD,
Mhm.
is really similar to our PRD, planned residential development. So some communities have a neighborhood conservation district, and how it gets written is kind of similar to our planned residential development district. The model that the board was looking at was the actual where basically a defined neighborhood, and they establish.
I think the deck house, like one of the deck house communities, right? You had brought up last year or 2 years ago or something.
Jenny Dugan neighborhood.
Okay. Exactly.
Looked into this.
Okay.
And that's where they decided they didn't want to go the neighborhood conservation district with where there was an actual property owners reviewing other property owners
Sure.
because of some of the issues that other communities have raised, and they actually were in conversations with the HDC about establishing a new historic districts, a new
Okay.
historic district based on, and Cananum was the prime, one of the prime examples, because the tear downs are starting to happen there as
Yep.
well. So
Yep.
um
Yeah, and I think, the interest was going to ebb and flow, but maybe I've been hearing more interest in it myself recently because, and maybe the market's cooling, maybe that'll, again, the interest will wane again, but given this past year and the insanity with all the tear downs happening, I think I've been hearing more people just in passing be like, just clearly frustrated.
so I and I think as far as the issue of tear downs and mansionization, kind of every tool is on the table, but specifically the neighborhood conservation district model that the board looked at, and there may be other models that are kind of called the same, but not that same
Different
model
flavors.
where a neighborhood actually, like I think it's like 80% of the property owners have to agree, and then they have to make elect a governing board to review everybody's changes.
Right.
I think that model would be very challenging for the planning board to initiate.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm recalling the previous conversation, because it was when Kate was still here, was the possibility of looking at that model and whether it was possible to pass the bylaw that established the framework, and then that framework would be in place, and if a neighborhood came together and was able to pull together all the property owners and come together and want to do this, that the framework would already be in place.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question as a newbie?
Sure.
So I confess that I had not actually heard of neighborhood conservation districts until I read this document. If the goal is to allow a neighborhood to essentially apply a neighborhood-sized FAR, then I see the point, because it allows a single neighborhood to do this rather than having to have it apply to the whole town. But on the other hand, it creates strange differentiations within the town. And if it's to preserve historical structures, then it really seems like that's a matter for the historical commission or the HDC and not the planning board, except to follow as necessary. And if it's to apply some sort of design review standards, like we don't like pink houses or something, then it doesn't seem like it's in the purview of the planning board at all. So I guess I'm trying to suss out what is the goal in terms of things that apply to the planning board of possibly allowing or supporting neighborhood conservation districts.
So there's a bunch of different answers for that question. The first answer is one of where, when this action item list was created as part of the Envision Concord plan, the list of boards and committees and departments that may be involved was just that
everybody.
list.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not
it didn't-
specifically a planning board thing in the Envision
correct.
Concord. Yeah.
It didn't say specifically, but since the planning board was mentioned when the board created this, we put in every section, goal, and action item where the planning board or the planning division was referenced. So just because it's in there doesn't mean that it's necessarily the planning board is the one that was that should be taking the lead.
Okay, got
The
it.
model that the neighborhood conservation districts, the planning board was talking about was more it did not incorporate a different FAR model. It was the preserving the existing neighborhoods and their homes and their characteristics and the design and the type of housing in a neighborhood. So like the deck houses was, the perfect example. But it didn't incorporate some an FAR aspect that over was, but I didn't want it. I don't.
Well, that makes more sense now that you say this isn't specifically a planning board goal. It's just a general town goal that the planning board might or might not be involved in. Okay.
But a conservation district is like technically it's under zoning, right, Elizabeth?
Yes,
Okay.
if somebody were to do something, it would be a zoning bylaw, and at that point, the planning board would be involved, would be required to be involved. Okay, so well, is grassroots hyphenated, Sue?
Not usually.
Okay.
In fact, it's spelled with a hyphen about 1/8 as much as without.
Okay. So item 6, the Haley had provided different other green zoning initiatives, and then the board just wanted to keep elevating that discussion as part of all the other items that you discuss, including your subdivision rules and regs updates. And I would would suggest and also include the site plan rules and regs in that as well.
And I guess you should update the year from 21-22 to 22-23. Yeah.
And I don't have the goals in front of me. Was there?
Give me a second, I'll drag it up. Goals memo, here we are. The word green does not appear. But I can look for other good search terms.
Oh, it's probably site plan rules and regs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think no, so it's either green zoning or and sustainability. So
There's nothing under
during-
either green zoning or sustainability, but there is research site plan rules and regs.
Right, so the conversations that the board had last year was that as part of all of the items that you do, and was to incorporate green zoning or, or sustainability measures into all of the conversations that you have about zoning bylaws, site plan rules and regs, and subdivision rules and regs. So it may be that we can say,
Yeah, Sue, I don't know if you had joined yet, but, well, you were probably even just listening in, but Elizabeth, because the MAPC consultant had a pretty good first draft, I thought, of the
Yep.
site plan rules and regs with a lot of sustainability stuff in there.
Yeah.
so that'll be coming up on the board's agenda soon. So does that better reflect?
Yeah.
For some reason, I can't see. Oh, now I can see. I can see Mark. Okay.
That looks good to me.
Okay. And let me.
Save early, save often.
Yeah. So the next item was the specifically regarding allowing mixed use in and around the village centers. So it's, obviously the board has not finished its conversation on
So
whether
maybe
to
that
move
should say
forward.
PBD and combined biz res redevelopment zoning?
So at this point, hmm,
Also, I'm not sure, well, it's not on the table for discussion tonight, but I have been gradually chugging through the zoning bylaw and noticing some ways in which we might regularize some of the zoning across business districts, which is, it could be called part of either combined business residence or thorough depot zoning as recast for a new year. But we would have to take that up when it was on the agenda.
Okay.
I'm just saying it could be broader than PBD. It could be
so regarding mixed use.
general. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So currently the planning board is discussing the potential for amendments to the combined business residence for potential warrant article for the 2023 annual town meeting. But the board has not had a specific conversation about whether to move forward with the Thoreau Depot business district zoning in the same format or in some different fashion. So that's going to be a conversation at a later meeting.
So we should say something vague and general here about
Yes.
mixed use.
Well, the planning board is discussing
while you're typing that, I see someone has raised their hand. And given the nature of this, I think it'd be best to just kind of try to take a few questions as they come up rather than come back to them later. So Laura Payne, I see you turned your video on and you have your hand up. If you have a question, please feel free to ask.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I come as a representative from the West Concord Advisory Committee, just to get some clarification on the
Hold
project.
on, we'll need your street address as usual.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. This is my second week on the job. I literally not familiar with any of the rules here. So
Oh, it's
Um,
fine. It's fine to start out with Laura Payne's street address and then continue.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm interrupting Nathan.
Laura Payne, 480 Lawsbrook Road in West Concord. So one of the things that came up in the only meeting where I have been a member is the development for lot 13B in West Concord, which is the grassy area kind of between the Brookside Square and Neshoba Brook Bakery. And the committee wanted a little bit of clarification about the time frame and whether a new bylaw was needed to be passed in order to get the project going forward. And so I said I would attend this meeting and see if there was any clarification or any updates for that specific mixed use potential development.
So I can provide what I know. I mean, it's not related to the board's current conversation about the potential amendments to the combined business district zoning. What I know about that specific project is that given the requirements currently for 20% of affordable units, which there's 8 residential units, so they had to require 2 be affordable. That given the cost of construction and the cost of materials has gone up so significantly that financially they are having difficulty getting a bank to loan them money because the finances are not working.
And is that in relation to passing a new bylaw that would change that regulation? Sorry, I don't know any more details about this.
Yeah, I don't know if a bylaw amendment would facilitate that project or not.
We have been discussing whether or not to change those affordability requirements, and if so, how, but what Elizabeth said.
I mean, the current conversation, the draft bylaw that the board is looking at does change the affordability requirements. I haven't looked at how that might impact that project, and I couldn't tell you whether that somehow makes the project financially feasible or not.
Okay, thank you.
Carol Savoy, I see your hand up, and go ahead and ask any question you might have.
Great, thank you. Carol Savoy, 61 Belknap Street. So on this particular goal, I know that you just said it's amending the combined business residence, and prior it said Thoreau Business District. If you look at the goal in column B17 or cell B17, the goal is to renew and improve Concord's village centers. So I think the discussion in the past has been, do we redo, Thoreau Business District in some form, or do we come back with the combined business residents and do that across all 4 villages? And I believe when I asked the question prior, the planning board said that we're looking at this for all 4 villages. And I think that makes more sense if the intent is to meet the goal of renewing and improving Concord's village centers. It's not one center, it's all the centers. And if you're trying to, get mixed use and more housing, the more centers that are involved, the more housing you can get. My suggestion is to continue pursuing all 4 villages, not just limit it to Thoreau.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, looks like Elizabeth, you finished making the amendments to that one. And all the rest other than the last one, there's no specific planning board action at this time.
Yeah,
look at them.
enhance public space. I believe since the board did this update last year, the Economic Vitality Committee has formed and finally, got moving forward and is gaining some traction. And that committee was formed after the Envision Concord plan was done. So I don't know if the planning board wants to just put in here that it's just, if the EVC or additionally, the Transportation Advisory Committee has been formed, and whether they are looking at physical connectivity, and so the board could identify those two as if you wanted to just put something in here.
Well, this
Yeah, I
might
think
get
that would be a good idea. I know TAC is, especially, obviously for the physical connectivity portion, I know they're trying to do a lot over the next year, I think. So, yeah.
It's like with the language under Thoreau business, to the extent something similar proceeds for any of the business districts, like I think there was an emphasis on in the language around, connectivity, public spaces. So we're kind of going to hopefully address it in there, or it's related anyways in my mind, and also in site plan rules and regs, hopefully.
So do you want me to change this to in progress, as well as support the EVC and TAC?
I mean, I don't, maybe just recognizing that some of what we're doing is related. I don't know. Some of the idea of some of this, zoning is to make sure that, I don't know, there is more emphasis on connectivity at the very least in these denser areas. So you don't get like 12 different parking lots with different entrances or whatever.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Is was TAC, transportation, is EVC, is that supported by the planning department, Elizabeth, or I wasn't sure?
So the EVC is supported by the new division that's been added to the planning division to DPLM, which is the Economic Vitality and Tourism Division.
Mm,
So the Department of Planning and Land Management now has 5 divisions.
okay. So, are they just putting, are they have new staff or?
They're partially, yes, supported
Okay.
by Beth Williams, who is the Economic Vitality and Tourism Manager.
Oh, okay, I didn't know we had that.
Yep, yeah, and then Marcia also supports the EVC.
Okay.
And TAC is supported by our new transportation planner.
One thing, I don't know if this is at all planning related, but I'm just curious to get your thoughts, I guess, Elizabeth. When it comes to any review we might do, yeah, again, for something that might end up before us, like in one of the business districts. I don't know if like that committee or the new department is coming up with like a list of, ideal criteria for, what developments could do to increase economic vitality. But I think one thing you've heard me just say to you and Marcia about, the new restaurant, for example, going in West Concord, and I've reached out to the developer there myself to see if it's possible, but like, sort of encouraging criteria like operable windows, if no like outdoor seating is physically possible, how do you still encourage building owners or whoever they are to, do certain things that are known to kind of increase vitality in a community?
So that specific example, we tried.
Oh yeah, no, I know, I get it. But like going forward, right?
No, yeah, definitely. It's, and that's why, the conversations are, starting as far as, what the board's doing in looking at the fast food bylaw, which is interesting in the information that I'm getting, at least from other communities and even examples. And I think one example is coming from Don, who is on this meeting, is looking further into differentiating between, what is fast food and trying to come up with parameters under zoning for that. How do you regulate the parking for that? Because it's not the same as a sit down restaurant and the turnover that happens. And but looking at I think the term in the bylaw that Don had sent me was, you have full service restaurant, which is, sit down restaurant, waiter, food brought to your table, you pay for your bill when your meal is done, and which is different than a fast food restaurant. And currently the threshold for a restaurant is 50% has to be, over 50% has to be sit down, people eating in the restaurant. And, maybe we look at actually defining that percentage, and that's how you can, facilitate certain things. So, and I don't want to get into a discussion of, specifically about that zoning, but as the board knows, it's, you can touch one component in a zoning bylaw and have these unintended consequences. And so that's kind of the ripple effect, which is what's happening with trying to alleviate the prohibition on fast food restaurants, when we have businesses that want to have sit down but then want to have takeout. And how do you find that balance? So I think the planning board is trying to look at things that help with that vitality. The bylaw amendment that the board did to get rid of the parking requirement for outdoor seating has been phenomenal. And, so it's been 2 years. And, yes, we're, the nation is, still in, I'm going to say some, recession as far as people going out and the level of that type of activity and social gatherings is not as where it was like in 2018. But there hasn't been a huge impact as far as the restaurants that have outdoor seating. And so.
Is that why some of the restaurants, and I only know West Concord, but like I was kind of disappointed and surprised to see, Woods Hill not do what they had done last summer with the picnic tables, and Adelita took away some of their outdoor seating. And I was just, and you can tell me to shut up if this is totally off topic, but I was just sort of shocked that they didn't do it again, and disappointed because again, I still don't go eat inside with my kids anywhere, and nobody wants me to eat inside with my kids anyway. So
Yeah, I'm not, as far as, the example for, Adelita's, I'm not quite sure why they, part of it is some of them, especially, let's say Adelita's, for example, when you're like in a strip mall, is, figuring out, you can add the outdoor seating, but if you want to, take away parking spaces, you kind of have to figure out what's the parking requirement for these other uses, because you can't take away spaces for them. And so it's still, while that bylaw amendment did alleviate an issue with, and definitely an issue with the smaller restaurants and with smaller spaces, it didn't alleviate the entire issue of the parking requirements just being too excessive.
yeah, I'd just be curious to hear from either of them, like, hey, this is why we did it. And if it was just purely economics for them, fine. But if there was anything from a zoning perspective that would have helped keep it, I just would have be curious to hear.
So I know, but Adelita's, what was the other example?
Woods Hill. Last year in the summer, they did, most of that parking lot with picnic tables.
Yeah, that was where the Bank of America ATM is, that side you're talking about, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I don't think they could give up all that parking again.
Maybe not all of it, but some of it.
Yeah, but don't forget, that was done because they weren't seating inside. And my guess is that they probably struggled to get staff to do both inside and outside, but that's just my guess. Okay.
Yeah, just be good to hear.
Yeah.
I think.
So part of it, and this is where like communities, they're, some of the communities that are looking at just getting rid of parking, parking minimums at all, and looking at, parking maximums, or some communities are just getting rid of parking requirements entirely. Because, for, let's say, Woods Hill, they had all of that indoor seating was outdoors, and then bring all that seating back in. However many cooks or wait staff, and the size of your kitchen and what your staff can turn over as meals, there's a business balance that they can't have people wait an hour and a half to get their food because they have too many people seated. So there is that self-regulating for a restaurant, that it's the size of their kitchen and how many cooks are in that kitchen. You can't, you could have more people outside and inside, but you can't put any more cooks in the kitchen to make food faster. So
yeah, I'm just saying, like, maybe with a new division and the committee, there can be some coordination of like getting feedback directly from the the businesses.
yeah, I can definitely reach out to both of them.
Not just on this issue, I'm just saying like generally.
I imagine I'll probably hear a lot of feedback about the problem is the food code, which I can't help with that. But I can ask about the zoning side of things.
Carol, I see your hand is raised again. Is that still left up or did you have another question?
No, I had another kind of statement, I guess. I think we're still on economic vitality and improving Concord village centers. And on this particular item about open space, I know that the new combined business resident zoning that you've been talking about, and also the Thoreau, was to reduce the amount of open space and, and eliminate it if, you could do it in another park down the street or something to that effect. I think one of the things that people want to do, you want to encourage people to kind of stay in the main village centers and frequent the businesses and spend money. And particularly in the Thoreau area, like there isn't a lot of open space. So to create some open space or keep, the existing open space requirements, and maybe, I don't know if this comes under zoning or not, but, have some sort of, outdoor seating ability, or put benches out, or, so somebody who gets an ice cream, I think last year somebody complained that they took their kids to get an ice cream at Bedford Farms and there was nowhere to sit. And I think I sent to Elizabeth earlier that Concord Provisions wanted to put some outdoor seating on the side of their building on Middle Street on the sidewalk, which was public space, but I think the town allowed it because of COVID and may have extended those regulations. But I think the more you can have open space and have places for people to sit down, be it a picnic table or a bench, they're going to stay in those areas. They're going to go into the stores. They're going to frequent the merchants, and they're going to spend money, and it's going to help with economic vitality and just, improving the village experience. And then on top of that, I know I reached out to Elizabeth about some trees, and I know the tree bylaw, I think, is something that you did last year or somewhere in here. But, the more you can kind of make it a greener space where, there's dying trees or open areas, and spend some money, putting trees, to fill that out and just make it a more attractive place. I think you're going to get more people that are going to stay and spend money and visit these places. So that's just my general comment. And when you look at the combined business zoning, it kind of goes against economic vitality and public spaces when you're trying to reduce the open space to build more, buildings, I guess. I think there's a balance there.
Thank you. I would just point out that exactly what you're describing was in the bylaw there. We had setback requirements to allow for open air space in front of storefronts that would have been along Sudbury Road for that exact reason.
Exactly. And I think those open air spaces were, in setbacks, but it also, I think there was no public park or no green space at all, really. I would just suggest you try and not zone that out in your next go round, because I think it will be, people will find that more acceptable. When you're in your new combined business, there's no talk about any of the setbacks or any of that. I don't know if you're going to be adding it. It's just the 4 items, right, that you're bringing forward right now. I don't know if you're picking up any of the other things that you did in the combined business, a lot of that doesn't seem to be in the new version of it, but maybe you're just getting going on it.
So currently there are no setback requirements in the business districts. So the previous bylaw would have established them.
Right, and I'm just saying in the new bylaw, what you have right now is just open space, affordable housing, parking, and forgot what the 4th one was, right? But it doesn't talk about any of the setbacks or even design guidelines. Maybe you should put in here that you're, working on design guidelines separately from the zoning, because that might address some of this stuff too, right?
And I think some of this are going to address not necessarily setbacks, but some of the sustainability stuff with, reducing heat island effect and, trees and stuff like and I think a lot of the intent is in site plan rules and regs.
Do you want me to go on? Not sure how you.
I was just gonna say, do you want to just copy what the new, what you just wrote under column D, copy that to the same spot under, I guess it's 2.2 down 2 spots there.
Oh, this one?
Yep.
Wow, and it copies it without style or color. Bill Gates,
Yep.
you're just so wonderful.
Hmm. Okay. What else?
For the next one down, the co-working incubator spaces. I don't know that there's anything.
I'm enjoying this.
Yeah. I was thinking,
You just copy
anyway.
copy the cell itself, Elizabeth, not the text. It'll
Like that?
formatting will
Yeah.
stay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so what do you want me to put here?
I don't think we need to change that. I don't know that
Okay.
there's anything for us to
Okay.
do there.
Um,
Additional medical uses and green environmental businesses.
I'm not so sure that the community needs with any more medical uses. Based on Emerson Hospital, 747 Main Street, the rehabilitation center next door, and all of Baker Ave Extension, and Emerson Hospital's expansion over the last few years. So unless somebody disagrees that community needs more medical uses, unless it is, I'm going to say R&D space, maybe out on Virginia Road, or I think medical R&D might be different, but not necessarily patient driven.
Well, I think either way, I think you have it correctly there. I mean, this is for another committee. I don't think this is really for the planning board.
Unless the committee finds out that there's a huge vacancy rate in those buildings and we could convert them, redevelop them to, housing or something. Maybe we do a redevelopment district.
Well, I think that maybe so for different office spaces, but I can't see the current medical uses at 300, 310 Baker Ave, Harvard Vanguard, across the street at Emerson's Specialty Care.
I'm
can't
mostly
see.
being sarcastic, but I see a lot of for lease signs, is all I'm saying.
Well, but also suppose they did all go belly up and need redevelopment, I don't think that would go under row 22. I think that would go someplace different entirely. So I'm personally okay with leaving this as, let the Economic Vitality Committee decide they don't need to assess demand for further medical or not.
Sounds good. So the housing production plan is currently being updated, so I think this goal is should probably be changed to in progress.
So Elizabeth, I don't know if you have talked about this in one of the meetings I've missed recently, but I guess related to what is now law, which is very exciting in the climate bill. And I know somebody brought this up in comment a few meetings ago from the public. You know, will Concord qualify under the law for, you know, the whatever the article was that basically allows us to do all electric?
I think it's Article 31.
Yeah. My understanding is there's debatable when the timing is of if we were qualified back then versus now, and I know the risk to the affordability thing. But I guess the other part of what I understand is you can also, I guess, qualify or whatever the word is if you've got an approved housing production plan. Is that right? Like you can get out of, you know, if you're below the affordability limit, but you have an approved housing production plan, then you're okay.
I don't think that's entirely true.
Okay. I thought I read that. Okay.
So
I thought I read that you can have a approved multi-family dense housing by transit area as an alternative to enough affordable housing in town.
So I'll get the definitive answer, but it's my understanding. There's two ways that a community will be considered to be one of the 10 pilot communities allowed to move forward with a pilot bylaw for a fossil fuel ban. You either have to meet the MBTA communities requirement, or you have to be above, you have to meet the 40B requirement. As of December 31st, 2021. There's different ways to meet the 40B requirement. The 10% threshold is one of them. The other one is you have an approved housing production plan and you meet the goal, and it's a certain percentage threshold of units being created during a specific period of time. So I'm not sure that we meet that HPP threshold guide, but as of December 31st, 2021, we are, above 10%.
Okay, good. I was hoping that was the interpretation, but yeah, so I guess just on the housing production plan, yeah, that's what I was most curious about, separate from the whole climate bill anyways, just as far as like 40B was concerned, was wondering in this housing production plan that's being worked on, like, is on a go forward basis anyways, given our issues, like, will that meet whatever, will that get us out of 40B
No,
violation? It won't.
No.
The production plan won't.
not just having an approved plan does not. You have to meet the established threshold goal of creation of housing that's identified as part of your approved plan.
Okay, but it's not possible to, like, it's not possible to do it in the plan, like we're just not able to do it as a town?
I don't know what the threshold, what the current threshold is, whether it's you have to create, over a 5-year period, or 3% of, I don't know what that threshold is. I mean, I can find out.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, separate from the climate bill thing altogether, I just, since last meeting, was doing my own reading to get up to speed on the topic, and I think I was reading like the town of Weston or something, someone's website about 40B and that, you know, they're well below 10%, but they haven't approved. Well, they said their housing production plan is done, but not yet approved. And so I was just curious, like, is there an effort in this line item for what is in progress to, given that we're at high risk of falling below 10%, to try to meet it otherwise in the plan?
So that's, that's, my understanding is just having an approved plan doesn't meet the 40B requirement. You have to have a production goal in that plan, that you're meeting.
Sure.
So,
But that's, yeah, I just didn't know, like, how in control of that are we, you know, how attainable is it? And it would be a shame for the plan to get done and we could have, I don't know, I don't know who our HSO is, but whoever's, you know, doing it for us, if they could have gotten that in there, you know?
So the regional RHSO is the Regional Housing Services Office. That's the group that handles the affordable housing stuff. They are currently working with Jennifer Goldstein Consulting, and who is a housing specialist consultant on the housing production plan update. So, you know, that's moving forward. But what and I'll find out the definitive answer and you know, send it out to the board. But I mean, they're moving forward with, you know, getting the housing production plan updated, and that will be submitted to Department of Housing Community Development, and the plan gets certified, and that's that process. And then in that plan, so 40B says you meet 40B if you have 10% of, you know, subsidized housing inventory, and you meet the 10% requirement, or you meet 40B if you have an approved housing production plan and are creating the certain percentage goal of new housing each year. So, you know, maybe it's, you know, 50 affordable units a year. I don't know specifically what that percentage is. So, I'm fairly confident that we have not created enough units every year to meet the HPP threshold goal. And I think it's probably larger than what most people think. I mean, it's probably, you know, 20, 30, 40 units in a year's time. So, yeah, I mean, and that's, you know, that's a huge development.
Got it.
By a lot of people's standards.
Yeah.
But I'll find out the definitive, you know, what that number actually is.
Yeah, I mean, if it's like an unachievable thing, like, that's just good to know, like, because just, yeah, as written and on paper, I was like, oh, maybe if we're truly freaking out about dropping below 10%, like, can we meet it another way? But if it's like designed to like be unattainable, then that's, you know, that is what it is.
I didn't think it was designed to be unattainable so much as that, say, a town had no affordable housing whatsoever. And they said, well, each year we'll create 1% of our required affordable housing in a 10-year plan to get up to all of our necessary 10%, then they could protect themselves from 40B over those 10 years, as long as they actually built that much housing. But I'm making up, I don't know if it's 10 years, but it's only to show that you were behind and you really are catching up.
Sure.
Yes.
If I recall correctly.
I mean,
That
like,
is
a
correct.
plan is a plan, right? It's not definitely going to happen, but you're
No,
showing
but,
that you're trying to make it happen.
But
No,
if
but
you
I-
don't hold up with the plan, though, they cancel it out.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
Sure.
Yeah, you have to show that progress every single year. So, you
Got
know,
it.
even if it's 1%, you're talking 60 units a year for the town of Concord.
Yeah.
You know, people freak out over, you know, 12 units of housing. So even 60 units of housing. So,
Got it.
so the conversation currently about falling below 10%, people should be freaking out. Because I can tell you where the, first couple of 40B applications will come in.
Where?
No, I
I'm just kidding.
would definitely not say that publicly, but I have my ideas. So yeah, so I mean, people should be very, very concerned about 40B and falling below the 10%. Okay. On that note,
I was gonna say, I think that one should also be changed to in progress because we are having a payment in lieu of units as part of the conversation around affordable housing, right? So you can put that in progress.
okay. All right. How would the
I
board
think-
like to update number 1?
I think we should just update it wholesale because we are talking about amending FAR. It's in our goals for the year.
Yep.
We may not actually end up doing it, but it seems fair to just update it wholesale.
So I think as part of the planning board's goals, there was definitely no expectation for a warrant article. But coming back to having a discussion about the floor area ratio, the last time where it was left off was not trying to tweak the current formula in each of the zoning districts, but look at more of a sliding scale based on actual lot square footage and taking it out of the table, dimensional table for each zone district, and just putting that sliding scale directly into the floor area, the maximum floor area ratio section, which I think is 6-2-13, I think. So I think that was the last conversation that I remember. And I think Haley and Nathan were the only people currently on this meeting who were there during that conversation.
Yeah.
Is that what you remember, Haley? Okay. Okay. And so I can update this one.
Yeah, it'd be the same as the above.
Okay. So, oops. All right, so Haley, if I just click in the cell and copy. Is that how?
Yeah,
Yes, and I saw it get its nice little
Okay, and then,
outline.
woo,
Yeah.
all right, thank you. Completed, and
Well, I noticed these things were completed, but in column B, it mentions allow cluster housing development and co-housing in designated areas. And as far as I know, we haven't done anything about
so I'm just looking
that.
at 2-family and additional dwelling.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
It was Matt was the original developer of this table, right? Didn't he put this together the first time?
I don't remember. It definitely wasn't me. I don't do Excel.
I think it was Matt.
I loves Excel.
No person in their right mind uses Excel unless forced.
I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear that since I use it every single day.
Well, maybe you're
How do
forced
I-
to, maybe
how
you're
do I-
forced to use it.
So how do I do a return in a cell? Is it
I think it
control
was,
enter?
it was, yeah, I think it was a shift.
Oh,
We talked about this last time, and that I
know.
don't actually do very often.
no.
I'm not typically putting a ton of text into.
Oh,
Excel.
alt,
Okay.
alt enter. Alt enter, okay. And, okay, and so I just want to add what the board did with last year's bylaw amendment, which is to allow units created prior to the 2020 amendment. Which I was gonna wait for the last item for updates, for planner updates, but I'll just tell the board now. Received notification this afternoon that the Attorney General has approved all of the bylaw, zoning bylaw amendments and the general bylaw for the scenic roads. So,
Okay.
Good.
yeah.
Oh, right. I did have a question about this, but it wasn't the question I thought a minute ago. I wonder, why do we have to work with the NRC when co-housing and cluster development is not in a specially protected area?
Because if the planning board were to ever consider a natural resource protection zoning, you would work with the Natural Resources Commission on that.
I guess my question is, couldn't we allow co-housing and cluster development without having natural resource protection zoning?
I'm sure you could. I mean, the board already does cluster development with the PRD.
Mhm.
Right. But do we do co-housing?
I'm not sure what the distinction with co-housing is.
Oh, I thought co-housing was, it could
That-
include multiple non-related people living in the same housing unit above the typical limit above which it's called a hotel or something. I do realize the town just took out its co-housing for seniors because nobody wanted it, but times change, sometimes back.
I don't know.
Okay,
So I mean, if it's co-housing is everybody has a room and there's a common kitchen and is that what you're talking about as far as co-housing?
yes. And well, and also cluster development, the PRD, that's generally freestanding buildings. There's sort of a continuum of between single family units and
So does the board want to
SRO.
like research co-housing?
I guess I'm just thinking that in the housing production plan that's currently in production, and there's now the next update is in the middle of September. One of the questions on the survey for that I remember was in terms of alternatives for people to be able to downsize in Concord. We don't have much, and that would be a possibility, but I don't think we allow for it right now, particularly. So I'm
Alright.
sort of suggesting we should wait and see what survey results have been gathered and so forth,
Yeah.
and if there's really an interest in town. But yeah, so I guess I like the way you've written that.
Okay, but what I will do is I will at least send an email to Liz Rust to make sure that the housing production plan update is incorporating the co-housing as an option. Okay,
I'll send you a interesting case study I found, but the definition of co-housing is a type of housing development with both private and common spaces where members operate and develop a community through consensus and are part of a design creation, which includes physical layout that enhances community interaction.
Yeah, so I
Okay.
mean, I was thinking of one of my best friends, they just moved from a co-housing setup that was in Cambridge.
Yeah. There's that
More of a
Cambridge
co-op
Martha's
setup
Vineyard.
and, yeah.
Cambridge and Martha's Vineyard, there's two examples.
There are
Yeah.
others in the
I'm
state
curious,
because
what is the one in Cambridge? I wonder if it's the same one.
I think it's called, and this is a 2009 study from Connecticut, but Cambridge co-housing, I think it's called.
Oh,
I've read about others in Massachusetts. Not that there are very many, but more than
isn't
just
there
two.
one down the road from Idlewell in Acton? I think there is. Anyways, okay, well, okay, that one's updated. Come on, you're halfway
we
through.
gotta crank through this a little bit quicker.
Already 8:30. So for
Road
this
Depot,
one,
nothing to say about that. There's nothing.
no, I wanna put in, I'd like to put in at least at what annual town meetings things got updated.
Yeah.
And then so up here is what since the board hasn't finished discussing what they want to do about the Thoreau Depot. Oh, I was getting dyslexic when this was being done.
Oh, TPB versus TBP.
Yeah.
It's especially bad when you just wrote PBT as in planning board 2.
Okay, so you do have one completed item, which was the
Yeah.
When I was reading this, I did not know what complemented by other fee/incentives options meant.
I have no idea.
Okay,
Um,
it comes from Envision Concord, sure.
it does. I'd have to look further into that. And
It's
and
okay.
maybe like transfer of development rights or
Mm. Well, you're torturing yourself.
I know.
It's the wrong color blue.
Yes, Carol, I see your hand up.
It shouldn't be blue at all. Yeah. Should be the
No,
other
it should be
blue.
dark blue. Yeah.
Yeah, it's this blue, right? No. This
We're
blue.
not going to fire you if your colors of blue aren't 100% consistent.
That's right.
So Nick-
Carol, I don't know if you heard me, please.
Yeah,
come
I
back
was
to me.
just trying not to interrupt Susan and Elizabeth. On cell number C31 right there in the top of your screen, it says, you know, the
This one?
zoning, down one. The next one,
This
yeah.
one?
Yeah, so the goal, and that's the action, right, is to develop for potential areas in the 4 village centers, Concord Center, Thoreau, and in and around West Concord. And I think you also talked about 9 acres, which is not there, but then you have what you're doing is you're only doing the Thoreau Business District when I think you're also talking about the combined business resident, or whatever that combined business residence that you're bringing forth, which I thought was for the entire town, which hits those 4 village centers. So it's not just specific to Thoreau, it's broader, right? Isn't that what you're doing?
Yeah, and so as I read this, I mean, and maybe
No, it's a fair cop. Under in progress, we could say further discuss regarding TDB district bylaw and combined biz res bylaw.
but reading the actual
Oh, the part where it's about foster development of, whereas,
Well, isn't that what you
No,
want to do
it's-
by changing the combined business residence is to foster development in the 4 village areas? Isn't that? the
oh
whole
no,
point?
it's because it's about PRD. It's not about mixed use. It's only about PRD.
right, a PRD, and so again, it's very challenging to take these not well-structured sentences and formulate them into actual, you know, action items. So there's absolutely no way you would ever have a planned residential development near any of Concord Center, Thoreau Depot, or West Concord under the
Well, it
current
says in
provision.
and near, so maybe near.
No, there isn't a single property where you're gonna have that much open space that's
It would
currently
require
required.
redevelopment. Yeah, somebody would have to acquire 5 properties in the Southfield Road neighborhood and redevelop them as a PRD, if that were to happen as an example, which seems highly unlikely, but not completely impossible. But then it doesn't need, this in progress doesn't even seem suitable anyway, because the TDB district bylaw and the combined business residence bylaw have nothing to do with PRDs.
Correct. So I can delete this.
That seems sensible. I don't know, what do other people think?
That's fine with me.
I still want to put annual town meeting dates in there. But okay. I don't,
I have one change to suggest in the box you just clicked in.
this one,
Yes, which
okay,
is that form-based code zoning is labeled 6+ years.
yeah,
I only have 5 years on this board, and I've already turned through a couple of months. And I personally have been interested in form-based code zoning for Concord since I learned of its existence in, 2008 or 9 or something. So 5 - years would be my personal goal.
So I mean,
Well,
That's
that was from
fine.
last year, so,
um,
but 5+ already gets me off the board. Yeah, sure.
so
Looks good to me.
here's the thing with form-based code zoning.
It's
would-
hard, and we would need a consultant.
So at this point, the board, if this is something that the board wants to move forward with, the board should specifically request that funds for a consultant be included in the capital plan to do this, because you're talking significant amounts of money, like $100,000 to hire a consultant to go through the year or 2 long process to develop something. It's not something that can be done in-house.
And do you think that's something we should do, Elizabeth?
I think it's appropriate for certain areas. It's not really something you could move forward with for Concord Center because it's in a historic districts. So you can't really, that'd be very challenging to marry those two together. I'm not saying that it, maybe it can't be done, but that would be challenging. Because what the Historic Districts Commission is so specific as far as trim details and paint and actual materials, and so it'd be very challenging to try and get a form-based code that gets that particular. So, but you whether Thoreau Depot or definitely the West Concord Village, you could, and even West Concord Business District, that's probably something that could be done. But
When I think about what form-based code would get us, it's some things like allowing us to have non-uniformity in our zoning districts so that buildings on a south side of a road would be required to be shorter than on the north side to prevent casting shadows onto the street, or allowing us to say that a certain depth of development along a street front must be a active, human-oriented foot traffic business, but you could have housing at the back of a deep property, which again violates uniformity. And these are reasons why you would need form-based code. I thought some of the ideas in the proposed Thoreau Depot business article were verging on that, but there were some things that seemed to be very difficult to pin down without form-based code. Now, the town has a lot of priorities, and maybe this one is not a high enough priority to spend this money on. But those are reasons why I've been thinking for all these years it would be valuable. I know that when we did some things with the West Concord Task Force, that was not how I thought it was best to write the zoning bylaw. It was just, we had no better alternative at the time. And
Well-
I'd also like to see some of those things get carried over to other parts of town, especially Thoreau Depot.
So maybe since this is just near and dear to Sue's heart, I imagine this has to start off with just like some basic like re-education for the board and research and whatever before anything is actually going to happen. So maybe it's just something along the lines of, yeah, exactly. We're not gonna decide here and now if this is a good idea, obviously.
I agree.
Yep.
Let's keep cranking through.
Hey. And
I mean,
so.
that's potentially still in progress, right?
Well, but so reading this more specifically, I think in progress is better to
If you go forward one letter and then type and then delete backward, then you can have it come out black and
There
don't
you
have to
go.
mess with menus. How to bend this stupid thing to your will.
these are two specific things that are currently in progress as far as streets, neighborhood trees, natural spaces.
Oh, and now you can delete that extraneous O right after in progress. Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay, completed. And this will be part of those goals. And I can tell you that for annual town meeting for 2023, the preliminary maps that the town got in August that had from FEMA that were inaccurate. We may see the revised preliminary maps sometime in towards the end of September. So,
Okay.
so more than likely, the board will be putting forth an amendment for the zoning bylaw for those specific panels that FEMA is updating. But it's taken them over a year to fix their mistake. So I'm not going to hold my breath. And then I will update this one to add your bylaw amendment from last year.
I also have been wondering for some time how the zoning bylaw applies to tiny houses. For example, and it doesn't even really matter if they're tiny houses. What does it take? Trailers are not allowed, I believe, anywhere in town for some
Only-
reason.
They're not allowed because of specific issues that are necessarily have to do with whether it's on-site sewage disposal or sanitary, or town sewer, and then town water connections. So,
And I guess I'm wondering similarly about tiny houses. If you trailer in a tiny house on wheels and plop it down on a property, what would it take? Let me withdraw that. What is it clear in the zoning bylaw what it would take to have it be a legal accessory dwelling? As long as it is, then I don't think we need to do anything at all. But if it's not clear,
No,
is it
you
enough
would-
if you
you would
legally
have
hook
to
up
meet the
town sewer?
requirements of the additional dwelling unit bylaw.
Yeah.
So there's nothing disallowing tiny houses as long as they meet those requirements.
There's nothing disallowing a small additional dwelling unit.
Yep. Okay. And it doesn't matter if it's a tiny house or not.
Well, it matters if somebody, so the definition of a tiny house is generally a house that's on a trailer you bring in and you plop it down, and that's not permitted. You can't trailer in a house and just park it in your yard and use it as a dwelling.
And I
But
guess
if you
should we-
legally hook it up to town water and sewer, or legally hook it up to town water and a septic system or a well or whatever, then it would meet the requirements of an additional dwelling and it would be okay?
Well, no, you'd have to take it off the wheels, put it on a permanent foundation, meet the building code requirements as a dwelling unit.
Okay,
So,
okay.
yeah, so I've always been curious about this one. I mean, should we change that? Like, I know I follow this a bit more in Maine, with tiny house movement, but given just, construction costs and material costs, what they are, the foundation is often what kind of kills these things on a small scale. If they can hook it up otherwise and meet the building code, like what's the difference if it's on wheels, like a wheeled foundation or not?
Because I don't know what the building code in Maine is.
They had to change,
Yeah.
they basically had to change policy to say, like, we are not going to exclude tiny houses on wheels just because they're on wheels.
So I can ask the building commissioner what the impediment is to having.
And
a
if
house
the
on wheels.
impediment is that it would blow away in a hurricane, then I wonder, rather than having a traditional permanent foundation, what about the various sorts of piles you can drive into the ground or sink into the ground for a porch that you could tie your tiny house down to in some strong
that's actually-
fashion? Why not?
So those foundations are actually more expensive, unfortunately, because I spend a lot of my time looking at this. I have an obsession with tiny
Wow.
houses, but
Oh,
because of the depth you have to screw into. But anyways, yeah, I guess I don't think it's even a good line of questioning, like they're not going to blow away in a hurricane. So I don't want that to be the
okay.
the
Well, I've
floating
been wondering all this
concern.
time. I
Um,
understand maybe having some concern about people shouldn't be able to just truck them in, truck them out, truck them in, truck them out. But if it's hooked up to town water and to appropriate sewage disposal of some kind, I
Sure.
also wonder, why shouldn't we allow them?
Yeah, agreed.
Because somebody will again, you think back to some of the other zoning bylaw amendments that the board has tried to put forward in the conversations with the issues of all right, so what's going to be the impact to police, fire, schools? People will just want to drag in a tiny house so that their kids can go to the school system. And so it's not just the physical nature of zoning that allows somebody to do something. And so I
guess, here, I was only suggesting, why should it have a permanent foundation? I certainly understand we wouldn't want to just let anybody bring in a tiny house without any regulation of any kind. But under the additional dwelling bylaw, does it really have to have a permanent foundation? And I guess that would be a question for the building.
I want to
Commissioner to
back up and
ask
say that
why.
I don't think we need to spend a ton of time having this conversation right now. I think we can.
Good point.
If we want
wanted
to expand on
is-
this at a later date, we can add that to the box there and have that discussion in 1 to 2 years or within 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, I agree.
That's fair.
It is important. It's another, it is important though, because this is, a lot of other states have been tackling this issue because unfortunately the tiny houses brought in on the frames with wheels, like they're more affordable. But not everybody loves the look of them, but so I just am curious, like the history of, why not something that is more trailer-ish, but it's, it's not like the 1950 trailers or whatever. It's just another impediment to the affordability issue.
1 to 2 years? What's the? What is that, line 40? I don't remember the, in, 1 to 2, but. Does that work?
Yeah,
Works for me.
Okay. So. Oh, so I will update. I will update this item. Well, it's not a planning board thing, it's a planning division thing, along with having the new transportation planner and starting the Concord trolley. Has everybody seen the Concord trolley yet?
I have seen it.
Ridden the Concord trolley?
That
So
hasn't
we did also submit the grant funding for the Federal Lands Access Program in coordination with Lincoln and Lexington and the Minuteman National Park, which would expand the whole shuttle system. We're waiting for the Workforce Transportation Grant Program to hopefully be initiated, because then we will loop in a second, I'm going to say a second loop, which would connect to from the Concord Center and loop its own loop in West Concord, and expand the time frame to incorporate from like 7 to 7, so we can get more of the workforce and hit some of the major employers as far as the workforce side of things, to try and increase, an alternative form of transportation. And so line 44. Oh, that's so much easier. Thank you, Haley. So I'm not sure.
I wonder if the tiny house part would go. Go there.
So this is again where the sentences throw things together. Encourage infill development with affordable and sustainable passive or net zero housing. It's
Kitchen sink.
yeah, it kind of is a kitchen sink thing. So it's hard to. I mean,
It seems appropriate as is, because
is.
that pretty much covers 12 different committees, and yeah.
But so, like, again, possibility of linking renewable energy efficiency requirements on new large home construction to finance of workforce housing. So, while we have CSEC, CAB, this type of option, I mean, you're talking about something that would probably have to have some legislative amendments to be able to to finance, from one project to finance something else, you're talking about legislative action would be needed, but
Ooh, I like that one. I haven't seen that one before.
this one,
Which one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, but we could let CSEC cab take the lead.
We don't need to talk about it. I'm just saying.
so this one is always ongoing. And I think with the Concord trolley starting off, I think that gives us we'll give the town and the board another mechanism to try and move forward. I definitely think this is appropriate as is. The board did review this, and it is somewhat amazing when you look at the actual 500-year floodplain, given we have 3 rivers in the community. The 500-year floodplain is not very significant in our community. So I think it's appropriate for this one to be changed. While it is another committee, it's not the planning board, but it is in progress, and that's with Article 31 and the fossil fuel ban bylaw, and moving forward with the new legislation and hopefully being one of the 10 pilot communities. So I think this should be updated to reflect that.
Isn't
Yeah.
there a new stretch energy code too in the recently passed climate bill? I don't know if we need to change anything to adopt that. And I actually I don't know how I know they were talking about that, but I don't remember how it came out in the
Well, they
end.
got that was in the last year's climate bill, but I think it's been a painful, slow process with DOER actually creating the stretch code.
Oh, okay, you're right, that's what I mean, but they were working on coming out with a net zero energy stretch code that allowed you to use fossil fuels.
Yeah, it's kind of a joke.
It's really quite remarkable, yeah. But I also don't know what their post midnight session oh no, that's the legislature again. I don't know what OER has come up with in their final version.
But Elizabeth, I mean, presumably we don't have to opt it into anything new. It's just whenever the new stretch code becomes what it is, like it is what it is.
I believe so. I believe when so the community, I don't know how many years ago, passed the warrant article to adopt the stretch code, and I don't think it was. I think it's unspecific enough that when the stretch code gets amended, that the town's just adopting whatever the amended stretch code is. I don't think we have to go back to town meeting.
Thank goodness.
For next steps, though, on Article 31, Elizabeth, like, is there anything on the planning board that we need to do, or is nothing?
No,
okay.
I don't believe so. And I mean, that's currently a conversation town council's having between the Attorney General's office and the Department of DOER.
Yeah.
Which is,
yeah, just I know Matt was asking, like, okay, well, now what's next to actually make sure we lock ourselves in, and how do we actually implement it in Concord?
Yeah, so that's currently something that town council is having discussions with the Attorney General and what does DOER stand for?
Department of Energy
Energy
Resources.
Resources.
Okay, there you go. Looking at the legislation and making sure that there's language in there, you know, regarding the 10 communities and when the governor signed it, comments that were made. So to make sure that the warrant article went to town meeting, passed, to make sure that it doesn't have to come back to town meeting again. It's already been in, it's already passed. And so we may not have to do anything. But those are conversations that the Attorney General's municipal law unit is having with DOER. But it is not something that the planning board would be involved in.
Yeah.
But I will update that one to reflect, you know, what's been going on. So, you know, the planning board is going to be, you know, as far as in progress, updating the tree preservation bylaw. I don't know where that went. I'll find it and I will update. I will update that one. And the planning board's not involved with the street tree replacement program. That's through Public Works. But I will update that one at least for the tree preservation bylaw. So again, this just updating this one to reflect what's in the goals. And I'll update this one to make sure that the language is consistent with what was in your goals memo. And then I can update this one to include the adoption of the preliminary maps. Just so it's on the radar. I don't think any, I think this one should be updated to talk about TAC.
Hmm.
Same thing with that one. And then that one's not a planning board item. The one thing and I'll go through these again if unless the board wants to do it now. Is nowhere in here it talks about the scenic road bylaw adoption and the rules and regs. And maybe that could go in this one as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And 11 items where I can, I'll just update that language. And then if somebody wants to volunteer to take a look before it gets finalized, or if the board wants to just bring this back for your next meeting, just one more time.
I'm happy to look at it if simplifies.
Same
things.
here. If it's useful.
Well, I can only have two of you. That's it.
Well, that's two.
Okay,
So we'll do that then.
okay.
Good.
So if that's happy, I mean, it's not like you're voting on anything. You don't need any type of formal motion, but if it's a consensus of the board that this is final, I will after those updates and Nathan and Sue look at it, then we can go from there.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Is that all right with everybody else?
Yeah, if you send it to me as well, so I'd like to look at it again. Okay.
I could withdraw.
Okay.
could go
Sue
through another
withdraws and I
meeting
will send
cycle.
it to Mark. I'm happy to, or I mean, I'm happy to send it to everybody.
Yeah, I'd like to look at
Blind,
it. That's all.
blind CC, and if you have comments, just reply back to me.
That'd be perfect.
Okay, I can do that.
Great.
All right.
Good.
And
Next up is the meeting minutes of June 28th. Those. Were there
so
any
Sue
edits or
had
changes?
sent me comments, and then I sent out revised minutes to everybody. Was there anything else?
No.
Not for me.
In that case, I make a motion that we approve the minutes of June 28th, 2022 as written.
No, as amended.
No, I resent them out to the board and they got reposted, so it would be
Oh,
as written.
great.
The only time it's as amended is if at the meeting you make amendments to what got sent out.
Oh, gosh. I've been doing it wrong all these years on other committees and no one corrected me.
No, so if I send them out to everybody early enough and everybody sends me back comments and they get resent to the board before the meeting and then it would be as written.
So we need a motion, right, Nate?
I made that motion, so I need a second.
I second it.
Thank you. All right, take a vote on that. So Mark,
Aye.
Haley,
Yes.
Sue,
I,
and I'm also a yes. All right. I believe any liaison town planner updates, we got a little bit of information on one update, so.
Yep.
Are there any others?
I liked your quotes in your article, Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you.
That's a
Yeah,
very prominent, it's a big time article in the Globe for us.
I was really happy, and I was more happy that she was able to speak with Dan Gainsborough, and
Yeah.
you know, they've done quite a bit. So yeah, so my mother pays like the $100 a month to get the Boston Globe delivered. I mean, she reads it front to back, and that morning she kind of had something going on and she read the first page and part of the, you know, page 4. And so we went over there for dinner, and Peter's like, so what'd you think? And she's like, what do you mean? This is the article. And so she was very upset at herself that her daughter was quoted in the Boston Globe and she didn't read it.
I think I missed this article. Now I have to go hunt it down. I used to get the paper one. Even the electronic one is almost that expensive. It's outrageous.
So yeah, it was about the climate bill.
Mm.
So
I'll go hunt it down.
Elizabeth, are we interviewing for a new director of sustainability at all, or what's the?
the last I heard, I mean, the job was posted, and it was posted, and I don't believe it's closed yet.
Cool. I was just curious.
So yeah, which we're all chomping at the bit.
It's a lot of demand for those people, tough to keep them in this economy.
Very. It's difficult getting anybody, so.
There you are, your name in lights, Elizabeth. Hooray for you. Wonderful.
This was like I just couldn't believe it was the issue, that trying to tank the governor signing the bill. I was livid about it until the end there. I'm glad we all prevailed.
All right, if there are no other updates, we'll move on to if there's any. Wow, I don't think there's anybody else here. I don't see.
Nope.
It's just us. This is just a
It's
small
just
gathering
you.
of the five of us. So there is obviously not going to be any general public comment. So I think it's 9:12. We can adjourn this meeting.
Great. Have
Good night.
a
Yeah.
wonderful evening, everyone.
Yes. I'll talk
Bye.
to everybody later. Bye.